Hi, Mrs. Bootsma. I hope this isn't too quiet. I tried recording this already and it seemed really quiet for me. Um, Hopefully it isn't for you. If it is, just email me and I can try and redo it on a different app maybe. But regardless, this is my summary of Nice to Eat With You Communion Acts, Chapter 2. So what is this chapter about? And this chapter, it talks about a couple different things, and the main thing is what is a communion? And what does it mean in literature? Why do authors include them, and what is their importance? And examples of a communion. So what is a communion? The definition for a communion is the sharing or exchanging of intimate thoughts and feelings, especially when the exchange is on a mental or spiritual level. But this isn't the only definition, and a lot of people, when they hear the word communion, they probably think of something religious, but that's not what it always means. What can it mean in literature? It can mean any sort of gathering over food that can show how characters are developing with one another, or maybe how they're not developing at all. There's a quote from the chapter that I really liked, and it says, "In the real world, breaking bread together is an act of sharing and peace, since if you're breaking bread, you're generally not breaking heads." So what is the importance of a communion? A communion can show that characters like each other. It can show trust, friendship, and family. It can show that they're really bonding together and getting along with each other's personalities. They can also really come across boring or dull when writers are trying to describe them or what is going on. So usually there is a really important reason for including one. Otherwise, it would just be really boring for the reader to read. It can also show the lack of those things, if maybe the characters are arguing or not eating, or if a character gets up and leaves. A lack of communion can also communicate this. So the author included a couple examples in this chapter, and the first one was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. The way he explains this one is that the grandpa gives Charlie all of his money, which happens to be a single dime, and he buys a chocolate bar, which they share together and they enjoy, in hopes that they were going to get the golden ticket. And even though he doesn't pull out the golden ticket in this scene, it shows just how much they really truly care for each other and how much they love each other, and they spend the rest of the book together and their relationship just continues to grow. Another example the author includes is Green Eggs and Ham, and the main character wants nothing to do with Sam or his green eggs, and he spends the entire book denying and refusing to even eat them. But after a while, he finally gives in, and he ends up liking the green eggs and ham, and he ends up liking Sam, and they bond together, and it shows just how much his character develops and how the story develops. Another example of a communion which I find really important is The Great Gatsby, where they were having dinner together and Gatsby comes over. And I like this example because even though it's not their typical communion where they're bonding and sharing food, it's really important to the plot, and I think this is probably not the climax, but it leads up to the climax of the book. It's really important because this is where Tom starts to find out the relationship between Gatsby and Daisy, and he starts to get really angry and tensions start to rise, and no one's eating, and everyone is very quiet and nervous. But I think this is a really important example because communions don't always have to be happy, and they don't always have to be bonding, but they can play an important role in the story and how the characters are interacting with one another. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening, and if it's too quiet, just let me know and I can redo it. Hopefully, I think I fixed it, so hopefully you can hear it. But thank you for listening.